Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Cabinet Member for Housing and Asset Management Decision Day, taking place from the Walton Suite, Winchester Guildhall. The time is 10:30 a.m. I am Councillor Kelsey Lerney, Chairperson and Cabinet Member for Housing and Asset Management. Please can I advise that the open parts of the meeting are being audio recorded and live streamed from the Council's website. In addition, a video recording of the meeting will be uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel after the meeting. Please can I remind any officers joining virtually to turn off their cameras and mute their microphones until invited to speak. Please can I also remind members and visiting members of the public to speak clearly and remember to use your microphone. Finally, please can I ask everyone to ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are on silent or switched off entirely. Right, so that's the formalities done. So the next item on the agenda is interests. Does anybody have any interests to declare?
None, Chair.
Right, okay, item 2, public participation. We have David Light from TACT here to speak, as well as Councillor Caroline Horrell. Would you both like to speak on the items on the agenda as they come? Right.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, item 4, we have the draft caravan site licensing policy 2021, paper DD 32. Right, and I have Gillian Knight to introduce this. Gillian.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. I bring hopefully a positive paper today following a recently introduced government regulation for residential caravan sites and mobile homes. The regulation came into force on the 1st of July and allowed the existing site licence holders until the 30th of September to submit applications. As such, the Council requires a policy indicating how it will assess whether an applicant or the applicant's proposed site manager meets that test. And it will be outlining the fees applicable to those applications. There is a legal or reputational risk in not having a suitable policy and fee structure in place before the deadline for applications, hence bringing that report today to the decision day. The Council has not previously had a policy for the wider subject of site licensing, but has had a published fees policy for this matter. The arrival of the new regulation provides an opportunity to produce such a policy and include matters related to the fit and proper person regulation. The draft policy itself is similar to that adopted and published by Eastleigh Borough Council and updated to include the new regulation. The Council manages 14 caravan mobile home parks, and the residents affected by this policy will be positively impacted. The policy aim is to maintain compliance with the conditions of the site licence, to undertake proactive site maintenance and improve standards, and to provide better management of sites across all tenures. The policy supports the Council Plan 2025 priority, Homes for All, ensuring the provision of residential permanent caravan and mobile home sites meet an acceptable standard of licensing compliances and are suitably managed. It also meets living well. The provision of good quality housing provision is linked to wellbeing. The policy of licensing of sites is aimed at better regulating standards and management of permanent caravan and mobile home site homes to reduce the inequalities of this tenure option. Officers do not envisage the work involved in accepting applications from existing sites to be too expensive, and they have a very good long-term relationship with the majority of licence holders. The policy is expected to involve a brief administration check of applications and supporting documentations for those sites that are well known to us. Should an application be refused under the new regulation, the Council is required to give reasons for the refusal, and the applicant has a right of appeal through the first tier tribunal, enabling such decisions to be tested. The Council already charges an annual site licence fee for all sites affected by the new regulation, and the current fees policy has been subject to an annual rate of inflation increase. The existing site fee, which can vary depending on the size of the sites from 164 up to 409, covers 5 years. The current charges adequately cover office time spent dealing with applicants, but a fee would be appropriate to charge should a site wish to add or change a site manager in that period. The fees policy is included into the new policy, and the sole change of the fee for applicants under the new regulations to cover the council's cost in running the licensing scheme. The policy will have a positive impact, and the regulation is welcomed by officers because it will impact positively on the community through involved residential, caravan and mobile home sites and management regimes. So the recommendation we're seeking today is that the council adopts the private sector housing caravan site licensing and fees policy as approved. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Mrs. Knight. Councillor Horrell, would you like to speak on this paper?
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to address your decision day today, and thank you to officers for their work in preparing the new policy. I have 2 brief questions, Chair. Firstly, I was seeking clarification as to the location of the 14 sites. I could not see that in any of the documentation. Maybe officers can assist. And the other point I have is that my experience of some of the sites that I'm sure are included in the 14 is not quite as perhaps rosy as your report indicates, that there's perhaps everything is sweetness and light and everyone's happy. I have experienced residents on some of the sites not being sufficiently satisfied with the management of the site. They struggle sometimes for maintenance to be actually actioned, lighting and things for safety, which they feel should be repaired, is not done. Perhaps ground maintenance works, again, not kept up to date. And they struggle with that dialogue with the manager of the site. So my question to you is, are we sufficiently sure that our policy is there to support residents where they clearly have concerns? And I'm very happy to take up with officers 2 specific sites where I know they are not happy, but looking for reassurance that your policy is going to give those residents the support that they need to ensure that the places which are their homes, their communities, are appropriately maintained. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. I do actually know where the 14 sites are because I actually looked it up myself on our website, so the details are there, but I don't know if officers would like to elaborate and respond to Councillor Horrell's other question.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. This new legislation will actually have to reinforce the current legislation, which private sector housing is able to take action over. We are currently actually taking action on another mobile home park site in the district, which may end up being court action. Following the introduction of the policy, if there are any residents you're aware of who have got issues with the particular site they live on, please feel free to let us know. We can actually follow up any complaints you may have been made aware of. But the policy will actually help to reinforce the current action we can actually take. And if there is an issue and a need to take enforcement action, we will do so.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to that you make a very fair point, and I think it previously a lot of private sector housing legislation is quite cumbersome, and it takes a long time to get people to those positions where we can perhaps prosecute. We're really keen that this fit and proper test, almost like a DBS check, is very much going to help us with making sure that we haven't got to take that action, but we are robust where we can. We are reliant on those being passed on to us to be able to investigate. And as Kevin says, we're currently prosecuting, and we have a plea in court today for one site manager that really has been absolutely atrocious. So yeah, we are working for it. We totally take your point. I would really be interested in the intelligence you have. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you can do the sites for me.
I can list each individual site, if so would. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Sites are Wickham Park, which is located in Alresford Road, the Glen, which is located in Main Road, Colburn Common, Avondale, that's similarly also located in Main Road, Colburn Common, Sunningdale, located in Spring Lane, Colburn Common, Idle Park, which is located in Bishopstoke Lane, Groundbridge, Flowerdale, located in North Drive, Littleton, Valdene, located at the Dean, Alresford, South View Park, located in Alders Battery Gardens, Wessex Park, located in Buddington Lane, Sutton, Scotland, Woodview Residential Park, which is located at Station Hill, Kirkridge, Denmead Mobile Home Park site, located in Dando Road, Denmead, Wickham Court, which is located along Southwark Road, North Holly Tree Park, which is located in Sutton, Scotland, and there's also a 14th site, Tynefield Park, which is located in Whiteley Lane, close to Titchfield.
Right. Thank you for that. Right. Well, I have no further questions. I do share Councillor Hall's concerns about residents of mobile homes. With over 500 mobile homes in our district covered by the mobile homes legislation, they do represent an important source of affordable market accommodation. But with owners and managers controlling so many aspects of service provision to residents, they are very open to abuse. Before ward boundaries were redrawn, my previous ward did cover the mobile home site in Littleton, and I am very conscious of the importance of good management of these sites, and indeed joined our previous MP in campaigning for better rights for mobile home residents, because we were very conscious of the abuse involved. I think we're finally getting to the point where the legislation is allowing us to manage this much better than we have previously. We have the opportunity to introduce the fit and proper person test to give us greater powers to ensure proper management of sites, and it seems right to not only do so but clarify more generally our policies on registration and the fees involved. So I will be signing this decision unamended. The recommendation is that the council adopts the private sector housing caravan site licensing fees policy 2021 policy as provided, and I will sign that now. Right, thank you very much. Right, we now come to the next item on our agenda, which is paper DD 31, new home scheme outline business case with a bed lane. So I have Andrew Palmer and Duncan Fairs here to talk to this. Duncan, are you going to introduce it?
Thank you, Councillor Lerner. Yes. So today we're seeking permission for a new scheme to submit a planning application and seek tenders to go out for the design and build of 4 new houses at Witherbed Lane in Sedgensworth. So we're looking at a scheme of 4 semi-detached homes, 2 pairs of semis, 2 2-beds and 2 3-beds that we will build to the Passive House building standard. The Passive House building standard ensures a high level of fabric efficiency, which through high levels of insulation means that thermal efficiency will reduce running costs for residents in the longer term. Sedgensworth and Witherbed Lane specifically, the site location is a green pocket of unused council-owned land, located in the middle of an industrial estate at the end of a lane of 6 existing council properties, one of which has been sold. So the impact on local residents is minimal, to the point even where we were able to consult directly with the 6 residents at Witherbed Lane, and there were no major objections to the principle of development at that location. So the houses themselves, we're working with Baker Ruff Hannon as our employer's agent, and I've appointed PDP as the architects up to planning. And as I say, we're seeking permission to submit the planning application and go out to tender. Significantly with this project, we are seeking a deviation from the procurement rules and looking to an evaluation tender model of 60/40 with an emphasis on quality, reflecting that this is the first council passive house build using a design and build contract. Yes, any questions?
Right, thank you, Duncan. I don't have any, so I'll invite David Light from TACT to speak at this point. David.
Yeah, the TACT support group met and decided that we support the building of these 4 houses, and as it is on land that is only a small area, and it would come in handy for people on the housing list to get affordable accommodation. And so it never went to full TACT because we haven't met yet, not until the end of September, but the support group supports the building of these 4 houses. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. We certainly welcome TACT's support on this. Councillor Horrell, would you like to make your contribution now?
Thank you, Chair, and as you know, I'm happy to sit alongside you and advocate for more homes to be built by the New Homes team in the district. However, I have a handful of questions specifically about the proposal we have before us today. Like David, I think we feel positively about the use of land that we own. Land is always a restricting resource, so that is absolutely positive and a good use of our own, as I say, equity in that. However, I question resource in the team. I'm in a ward which has a number of schemes that have stopped or slowed because we don't have the resources available at this point to ensure that they stay on schedule. I'm just conscious that if the resources, human resources, are not available, because clearly the HRA has the cash to do this, that we'll have a number of schemes that don't get fulfilled in the way that we have promised. So that's a question, I think, perhaps to Mr. Palmer and the team. A further question is, who will the homes be allocated to in this particular location? And I see that it's noted as affordable rents, but we know in places like the Valley, the huge advantage of offering social rents. So again, I question, when we look at the finances and move forward on this, the ability to have social rents. I am slightly nervous, and maybe it's just the wording in the report, of the comment about adequate parking. Having sat in a planning committee about a scheme the other day where we only had 1 space for each property, and we had two bedrooms. You have larger ones here. Adequate parking makes me nervous as to what that will bring forth, and the consequential sort of outturn as a result. Then, Chair, I think the final question, and this is just to seek clarification, the passive house scheme, the first one in the district, is obviously at Micheldever. and we've had some convincing to do to help people understand that particular approach. And I noted in the report that other approaches have been reviewed and disregarded. But are we wedding ourselves to Passive House as our standard? And as we evolve and all these things change, the agenda develops around house building regulations and the climate emergency, the climate question that we all have to address. Is this the best in class, or are there other approaches that we should be looking at? So just a number of questions, Chair, but as I say, overall, clearly supportive of the opportunity to build new homes. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Councillor Horrell, and we appreciate your support, but understand the questions. Mr. Palmer, do you want to respond on team resources?
Thank you, Chair. Just to make a few comments on that issue. Clearly, at the moment, we have a limited number of staff to take forward schemes. We are in the process of recruiting more, but it does mean that in the short term that we will have to prioritise very carefully which schemes to take forward and which schemes to place up our staff resource in. With this particular scheme, the stage we're at, we can take it to planning if members support this paper today. And if it is successful at planning, we'll probably not go out to tender because that will involve more resource until probably the springtime. So, and then we'll have to concentrate our resources to those schemes which are on site, hopefully at that stage. What we're hopeful is to be back up to a full staffing complement early next year, but in the meantime it will mean that we won't be able to progress some of those schemes on the list. And I am due to go to TACT at the end of September, and I'll be updating tenants as well on the development programme, what schemes we'll be prioritising and what schemes we will see some slippage from. But hopefully that is a short-term issue and one which will be able to be addressed early next year.
Yes, I think it's worth adding to that this is a problem across the industry around having a shortage of skilled staff. We are experiencing our staff being poached by other organisations, and it's quite hard for us to do the same. But it is something that we are very conscious of, and we do need to not only build up the capacity of the team, but quite carefully think about which schemes we do take forward and the number of schemes we're taking forward any one period of time. Mrs. Knight. Yes, certainly, Councillor.
Sorry to ask, but I think it would be helpful. Once you have agreed that prioritisation, please would you be kind enough to share that with the ward councillors impacted, because obviously we're managing expectations on the ground. People are expecting things to be progressing. If they are to be delayed for a period, it's much better that we manage that with our residents so that they understand the dilemma that you have in the short term and the approach that you're going to take. So I just ask that you're really clear with everyone about what actions you will or will not be taking. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Very happy to do that, Councillor Horrell. Right, Mrs. Knight, do you want to deal with the allocation of homes?
I may defer to Duncan, simply in that he will have assessed housing need as part of the build.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Knight. There are 387 households on the housing register waiting for 2 and 3 bed properties currently. And these properties are located close to Whiteley, and there are 8 households waiting, and 2 or 3 for 2 and 3 bed properties with a local connection to that area. But we recognise that not everyone with a local connection will have included it on their application. The properties themselves are proposing at 70% of market rent and will be let through the House Your Home Choice.
Thank you.
Thank you, which brings us quite neatly on to the next question around finance. Clearly, the outline business case is based on 70% of market rent, but that's not necessarily the final figure, because we do obviously need to move to the full business case for this. I don't know if Mr. Botham would want to make a comment on that, or are we?
Just to say that at this stage we've modelled it on our rent policy for new build homes, which is a 70% rent, and we've allocated 1-for-1 right to buy receipts to subsidise the scheme. Now, if we wanted to, we could go, instead of using 1-for-1 receipts, we could go to Homes England and ask for grants as part of the social rent programme, but it would mean us not spending our 1-for-1 receipts. So I think tactically, I think when we go to tender and then when we present a final business case for members, I think at that stage we should be in a position, we will be in a position to make a decision on whether to go the Homes England funding route. And if there is money available, we'll be able to perhaps get more capital funding to support social rents, such as we did at the Valley. Alternatively, if we need to spend 1-for-1 receipts, we'll be have to go down the 70% rent market. So I think it's a tactical decision that doesn't need to be made now, but will be made at final business case stage.
Thank you. I have to say on that subject that I am comfortable that a 70% rent still represents a very considerable discount on what people are paying in the private sector for what are really high quality, cheap to run homes, which certainly isn't the case where people are renting privately. Clearly rent levels are something that we need to look at and keep low. But the other thing I am conscious of is that we're ending up with a divergence of rent levels, with different rents being charged on all kinds of properties. And we may need to have a look at our rent policy going forward to try and gain greater consistency as far as that goes. Right, the final question was around the passive house standard. Now, we're not entirely wedded to passive house because we are in fact building some AECB properties elsewhere, but I don't know if Andy, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, just to say that there is a lack of clarity within the industry in terms of standards, understandable standards around carbon agenda, and what constitutes net zero carbon and what constitutes, the best that can be provided. Through our research, and I think it's something that we identified in our housing development strategy, which was agreed by members in March, was that passive house at the moment is probably the gold standard in terms of a sort of net zero carbon approach. Other standards are available, as has been mentioned, AECB, for instance, which is a bit, I almost call it passive house light. But at the end of the day, the gold standard, as far as our current research is passive house, because in effect that gives a certified building which has a very high air tightness, which will mean that energy costs for incoming tenants will be minimised. And really, we haven't been able to find any better standard at this stage. Something may evolve in the future and we may adapt our approach. But at the moment, passive house is probably the best we can do.
Thank you. Right, so turning back to the recommendations and the contents of the paper, I think it's very pleasing that residents' concerns were confined to parking and the road surface, because I don't think I've ever come across a planning application where neighbours haven't been concerned about parking in some shape or form, and I am satisfied that those are being dealt with by the team. I think the key issue within the recommendations is the tender evaluation. the fact that we're building these homes to a passive house standard does mean that not all builders have experience in this kind of development, and I do believe it makes it important to ensure we select a contractor who can deliver to the quality we require, and I am therefore supportive of the deviation from contract procedure rules using a 60% quality and 40% cost tender evaluation process. So in that light, I am going to...
Councillor Lowe, sorry to interrupt. Did you just want to make reference to the exempt appendix? Check if there are any questions.
Yes. Well reminded. Councillor Horrell, did you wish to refer to the exempt appendix at all?
Chair, I don't think that's necessary based on what you've said today about the review of finances at the next stage. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Mr. Light, did you want to comment on the exempt appendix?
No, thank you.
Right, thank you. Right. Thank you for reminding me, Nancy. Right. Yeah, so we have no need to go into exempt to consider the exempt appendix. Where I think the key points within that are contained in the report. So the recommendations are that the corporate head of asset management be authorised to prepare and submit a planning application to the statutory planning authority to obtain planning permission for the construction of 4 residential properties at Witherbed Lane, Sedgensworth. Recommendation 2, that the corporate head of asset management be authorised to approve expenditure of pre-construction costs up to £75,000 and that this work proceeds at financial risk to the council. 3, that the corporate head of asset management be authorised to prepare procurement documentation and, subject to planning approval, invite tenders to undertake the design and build of 4 properties at Witherbed Lane, Sedgensworth, using a standard JCT design and build contract, the results of which will be reported back to Cabinet prior to an award of contract. 4, that the corporate head of asset management be authorised to negotiate and agree terms for easements, wayleaves and related agreements with utility providers, telecom media suppliers, the Highways Authority and neighbours in order to facilitate the development, subject to final decision by Cabinet to proceed with the proposed scheme. And recommendation 5, that a deviation from the tender evaluation model within contract procedure rules, 60% cost, 40% quality, to use a tender evaluation model giving more emphasis to quality than cost, 60% quality, 40% cost, be approved. Now I will now sign this. I can find the correct section. Right, so that brings today's decision day to a close. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending today, particularly Mr. Light from TACT and Councillor Horrell. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.